This is our weekly all-team tactical. So we're going to use this time to sync up on what's going on around the organization, prioritize, and eliminate blockers. So the call is recorded, and we share it online. So if you have an issue with that, let me know, please. On the lag metric side, we have 907 transaction volume, so that's plus 800 from last week. 3 weekly transacting users, 0 new users, and 11 communities deployed. Just FYI for anyone, feel free to put stuff that you shipped in the what did you ship channel. Again, like the intent is that you can ship something. You can go ahead and think about what it is that BCard needs, and you can just ship it, right? Like you don't need to worry too much about what it is. The intent is to try to make it easier for people to contribute and get compensated. So there is a little what did you ship channel if you're on, if you have the team role here in the server, and I think everyone here does. So just go ahead and drop it in there. From a milestone perspective, we're working on getting new users through our community pages. And so the first cut of our black flag design is almost done. There is some spacing kind of that I have left to do. I'm also going to remove all of the multi-pages because the framework that we created doesn't actually have the ability to show multiple pages yet. So I'm going to get a first release out with just a single page, which is actually what the app used to be, which just links out with that, which just link outs to like snapshot and stuff. And then I will add the multiple pages in later and ship it. So the blackflagcollective.org will now point to this new site. And then I'll add multiple pages in after. Tom, do you want to give an update on the snapshot functionality? Can you guys hear Tom? I can't hear him. Uh-oh.
No, cannot hear Tom.
Okay. I can't hear you, Tom. It looks like you're trying to speak, but I don't see the green around your person. We'll give Tom a couple minutes to see if he can figure out his mic, but yeah, it's not working yet. So we'll come back to that one. I think he's leaving and coming back. On the in-app voting and endowment fund, May vote is done, so I have to distribute the funds and put them up on social. Usually this post is a nice one to just be like, hey, we just sent out a bunch of funds, right? And so we'll try to do that as well so that it's nice and easy for everyone. And then we can kind of show we can kind of get a little traction on those. Usually that's what those social posts where you distribute money tend to be more popular. And
Hey, can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Hey, Tom.
Oh, it's must be a headphones issue. Okay, so the process this week was just integrating embedded wallets of Privy with the voting process of Snapshot, and it's not all the way there, but it's getting close.
Were you able to use the Snapshot React widget that we did in our app that you created for our app?
Pieces of it, yeah. So I'm definitely reusing pieces of it as we go, but I'm trying to clean it up and make it a little tighter too.
Sweet, yeah. Because eventually we want to be able to use the thing that you're building, use it on other sites as well. So yeah, it makes sense that we're kind of cleaning it up. I assume that there's a bunch of like BCard app specific code in there that we can.
Yeah, most of it is. There's a lot of hard coded things like which spaces are we looking for and so on and so forth. So I'm going to try to make that a bit more modular so that that can be accepted as an input for each community looking at a different space, so on and so forth. So it'll handle that a little bit more. Let's just say hopefully smoothly.
Sweet. All right, thanks for that update. On the 10 high quality community side. Sorry, go ahead, Anna. Did you mean to say something?
No, I just turned off my car, so it's connected from my car, so that's usually what it gives me. But you can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, yeah.
Normally I have to disconnect and reconnect when I turn on my car. Okay. Yeah, 10 high quality communities. In terms of, did you want, let's see.
No, I was just asking because you unmuted, but
go for it, and then I'll chime in when you're.
Sure. So Arcusy is working on the historical accounting and the new accounting process. Do you want to give an update on that, Arcusy?
Well, so I didn't get as much progress on the historical stuff. I was planning to work on it yesterday, but didn't get to it. But I think that we've got the process down, and I saw your feedback links on the staying up to date on the new compensation methodology. So that seems to be working, and it should be a minimal lift going forward.
I think that the thing that will run out first is probably the amount of tokens we have in here. Yeah, I think we're down to 15,000 now of these black flag tokens.
Yeah, so yeah, that's probably a discussion for the ops meet.
Yeah, makes sense. So we'll probably need to mint some more token or just send some over from the contract.
I think we should be able to make it through this week, but then we'll need to see where we go from there.
Sweet. Sounds good. Anything else you wanted to share? Oh. So essentially, the way that the go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think that was it. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, essentially the way the process is working is like, so we have this kind of what did you ship? So every week I grab this from the what did you ship Discord channel. So anytime you ship anything, you meet with a potential partner or you did some work creating like an audiogram or anything like that, any kind of work that you do, you can just stick it in the what did you ship channel. We discussed it at this meet and kind of document it here. Then Arcusty takes this and puts it into a spreadsheet. Here's the spreadsheet over here, like on a week by week basis. So you can see here we have week 26, and you can see that we have like the contributors at the top. And then what happens is he takes this and he puts it into splits as a transaction that I can run. And on splits, when I click here, well, it doesn't show it now, but essentially, when you put one up here, there's like an execute button. So basically, when he puts it up, when Arcusty puts it up, he signs it, and then one of me or NF Thinker can sign it, and then we can send those out. And so, yeah, hopefully it's a relatively easy process to just click execute, 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 execute. It was pretty easy for me. Honestly, it's easier than creating a CSV and putting it up in safe. So far for me, but I'm not sure if that's true for you, Arcusty, because I guess that's that would be the alternative, is to like get a CSV and put it up in safe. But yeah.
No, I think so. I think it's a pretty easy process now. I think if people start submitting more and more stuff or whatever, then we might need to think about making some changes to the process. But that would be a good reason to be making the changes for the process.
Yeah.
If there's too much for us to manually process the way we're doing it now.
Yeah, I think it's good for now for the amount of contribution we have. So if it got too onerous, we could probably change it up a little. All right. So that's where we're at with this. And from a task perspective, let's take a look at Asana. We haven't, I think, looked at Asana in a couple of weeks so far. So community pages milestone 1. We're both kind of working on this. Blacklight collective site on the next step. So that's what I'm trying to do right now. And then so that's kind of like both of those kinds of things. And then let's say update the URL to point to the new site. So we'll be hosting it on Vercel for now, but there are other ways that we can host this as well. Since it's a static site, we shall see the best way. But for now, it's on Vercel, which is relatively easy to get working. And then make a wireframe for the badges widget. I think that badges or POAPs is probably one of the first ones we'll work on after Snapshot. So we have the voting, we have badges, all these little widgets that we already have. We could add them. I think another one that I really want to get on there is the calendar. Hey, what events are coming up? And so yeah, we'll see. But that's kind of the idea. Any other updates you want to give on this, Tom?
Nope, nothing to add beyond our wild future speculations.
Sweet. All right. Make it easier for us to get tokens to contributors. We just talked about this. I'll just copy and paste what was in the notes here. Anything else you want to say on this front, Arkisti? No? Okay. Black Flag Endowment Fund. Next steps, disperse May funds. All right. And processing audio from the DSI AMA. How's this going, Drost?
I have done nothing on that this week. Sorry.
No worries. No progress. Awesome. No progress. All right. Anything else that we're
Well, I
working on
wouldn't
that's
say
not
it's
on this?
awesome. It's disappointing, I would say.
Yeah, I mean it's the summer. If you're getting out there, it's cool. I think like the point of this is not to shame people, but to kind of give people an opportunity to have that accountability loop.
Fair enough.
Anything else that we're working on that's not on this list? Okay, great. Move back into here. And what did we ship last week? So I prepped and shipped the all hands last week, not counting this week. So I think we put that at 2K BCard. Does that make sense, everyone?
Yep.
And Winverse taped and shared the all hands 2K BCard. I did the ops work session with our Christie 500 BCard. That makes sense?
Yep.
All right. Well, I'll wait for someone other than our Christie to say because he was also at the ops work session.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good.
Indeed.
Okay. I shared our weekly meet on socials. I guess this was last week. Yeah. So that was 500 BCard. Makes sense?
Si claro.
Cool. 500 BCard for the work that you did on splits, integrated voting prototype code for module integration, 1K BCard. I led the product tactical this week, which was 500 BCard. Reviewed and sent contributor awards, 500 BCard. Does that make sense?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I was agreeing the whole time, and you're like, somebody please agree.
Sense making made.
Okay, cool. And the new design of the BCard site, I spent about 2 hours on that. Not quite done, but I did ship it to Vercel.
Bueno.
Awesome. Great job.
Cool. All right. Anything else that we shipped that's not on here? All right. Well, that's ready for our Christie to grab and put into splits so that we can dish out those payments, contributors. And just FYI, the payments that people are getting right now is a Black Flag token, which is usable for voting on those monthly in real life events. So when you get those tokens, you can use them on your in real life events voting on that monthly basis. Cool. Into the discussion. So I guess like I saw this post on social media and it was kind of like sparking a little something in me, so I thought I would share it. Basically, they have this ontology for communities. 3 types of communities: teams, cliques, and scenes. Teams come together to work collectively on a shared goal. So that's most organizations, sports teams, startups, companies, like even like advocacy organizations and that thing, they have some shared goal. Then there are cliques. They come together to enjoy and connect with each other. So groups of friends, romantic relationships, that kind of thing. And scenes, come together to enjoy and grow at something they're each passionate about. So a reading group, running club, sailing club, all these kinds of things. So I think BCard, definitely a team. You know, we have a shared goal that we're working towards. I think Bankless Style was a team and then turned into a clique, even though I think people resisted and tried to make it a scene. I'm not sure. Anyways, I think I feel like this is debatable, but yeah. Farcaster, I think, is the scene. It's a bunch of people enjoying and growing at something that they're passionate about, which is really like this kind of crypto technology and even the Farcaster network. The Black Flag Collective is kind of interesting because, like, you know, it's a team in that, like, we're trying to create this technology to actually enable communities, and that's kind of what we're doing with Black Flag Collective. But then for those individual meetups that people have, is it like a clique? You know, they're just meeting to be interested in each other. Is it a scene that they're kind of like all working towards self-sovereignty or something like that? It's kind of debatable, but it's interesting. Any questions on on that kind of ontology or comments as well? Does this make sense? This kind of positioning or framing?
Yeah, that all makes sense to me.
That's an interesting way to put it. So obviously, working towards a shared goal definitely fits with us. We are a team for sure. But I think at the same time, you'll find in all of these organizations that the people who are in them are also part of the multiple cliques and multiple scenes. You know, sometimes people dedicate themselves to, you know, just one scene and they own that. But a lot of people like to kind of be a part of a scene because they've got friends there, and then they go and they interact with a different scene because that's where their family interacts. So on an individual basis, I guess it would be interesting to be able to sort of map out how those scenes interact with cliques, and those cliques interact within those scenes, and then how these teams are formed to produce, you know, collective goals.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, like, when you look at any organization, like, you know, a workplace, people call it politics or whatever, but it's essentially a bunch of cliques who get together, and that's what people call politics, right? Like when there's kind of preferential treatment for your friends.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's definitely agree that people are part of multiple things, and even within the organization, they might have like kind of multiple ways of looking at it. But yeah.
I'm not fond of the terminology, to be honest, because
Yeah?
cliques tend to, while it implies camaraderie, it also implies exclusion.
For clicks?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that as well when you said that. I thought exclusion, because when people are cliquey, they can be kind of closed-minded.
Yeah. It
Yeah,
comes
so I
Well, not
think,
across to
like,
me as
closed-minded,
kind of
but
a
closed to new opportunities.
negative connotation to me. And I just brought up the dictionary definition of it. And yeah, that is the definition. So a small group of people with shared interests or other features in common who spend time together and do not readily allow others to join them. And based on that definition, I really do not like the use of the word clique.
I mean, so I agree though that is kind of what a clique is, right? Like that they connect with each other, but like the idea is that they are exclusive, right? Like a clique. Otherwise, if a clique wasn't exclusive, I don't think that they would be a clique. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, but I'm wondering if there's maybe a more neutral or positive term to use that infers a small group of people that have some common bond that ties them together more than someone who's outside that group. But it doesn't mean they're not willing. Yeah, but it doesn't mean that they're not willing to accept other like-minded individuals. It's almost like gosh, I'm wanting to think of electrons in a, when they've got in their, they kind of, whatever molecule it is has an open spot for electrons to come in. I don't know. I'm not a chemist, but
Well, let me ask you a
It
question
feels
though.
like clicks are too exclusionary. It's like they specifically their whole identity is not necessarily about what they are common about. The commonality is the way they exclude other people.
Well, let me ask you a question though. Like, let's imagine there's a clique. They all enjoy each other's company. They don't want people who are going to come in to ruin the vibe. Typically, how they would get a new member is they would you can't know you enjoy someone else's company unless you know them, right? So typically the way they would get another member is to have someone from inside the circle introduce a new person from outside the circle, right? So like, hey, this person really vibe with this crew. And so I do think that like is the reason you don't like it because you think cliques shouldn't exist? Because I think that they do exist, right? But
I think this is
it's
where,
like,
something like attestation, sorry to cut you off. I think something like attestations really come into play there because you have, the idea of vouching for a person, staking your reputation, staking money, staking whatever that may be. So in a way, DAOs that require staking do kind of become clicky. And maybe that's what, that was the ultimate destruction of Bankless DAO, was because too many cliques were existing within this ecosystem that didn't get along with each other, and the sort of the symbiosis sort of broke down. But looking at the thesaurus, another word that we used quite often, that is used quite often in this industry, is cabal. That's the first option for
Americans hate that
alternative to
word.
clique. Cabal, yeah, it's does hold negative connotations. Clan, which was destroyed. That term was destroyed with Highlander. You're not
I feel
paying
like
on
they still use them
Frida.
in video games like World of Warcraft, and so they have guilds and they have clans. I feel like clans has the
Yeah.
kind of like connotation of like blood related.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that was one of the things that ancient history, ancient civilizations tried to destroy, because a clan is strong, but if you can sort of break a clan down into individuals, then they're sort of weaker as a people. The third word on here, I'm gonna destroy and say wrong, but you can correct me, thanks, because you're French. Coterie,
So you can.
Coterie. Yeah, what?
Yeah. I mean, clique is
I
also
don't.
French, and in French you would say clique.
Okay, yeah, okay. Faction, gang, mob, posse, and then other strong matches, bunch, camarilla, camp, circle, club, crew, crowd, crush, insiders, lobby, mafia. Boom. We should be the mafia. Organization, outfit, ring set society. Well, we're a team anyway,
Yeah.
but as the Black Flag Collective, is Black Flag Collective a clique, or is it, I would say, probably more of a clique, right, than a scene?
No, I don't think. I mean, so it depends on the individual. It depends on the individual. So the top level, it's a team. We're trying to accomplish something. We're trying to increase the amount of in real life meetups by funding in real life meetups, right? So like we have a goal, right? So we're a team, Black Flag Collective, and all of those individual events, they could be cliques, they could be scenes, they could be teams, right? Like we actually don't know or even care, right? So it's interesting because it's a
Yes, true.
network of networks, right? And so I would say like at our core, we're a team. But like if I'm holding an in real life event, I would consider that actually a scene more than anything else, because we're like all sitting together talking about like the businesses we're trying to start, the projects we're trying to run, and we're just like we're enjoying ourselves, but we're like passionate about this technology. I think that's what we have in common. But there's some that are just clicks. Anyways, I guess like I know click has a negative connotation, but I think that like if you take a step back, like that idea that it is exclusionary, like that is actually the raison d'etre. That is the reason that clicks exist, right? Like they have all these. It's a group of trusted people who enjoy each other or have the similar values. Actually, the way I put it, if you look in it below in this "Why is this important" section, segmenting types of communities allows you to hypothesize what's important to them. Teams want outcomes, cliques want vibes, teams want engagement and fulfillment. All of them want revenue and engagement, but the way that they want it differs. This is the way I put it for cliques. They want engagement from people who share their values, engagement outside this will ruin vibes. And actually, if you talk to a lot of community owners of these like smaller, like let's call them group chats or other things like this, they really cultivate who comes in, because one person who sucks can ruin the entire group chat. And so I think that like I've seen it happen multiple times. There's like one person who, whenever I invite him to a group chat, he just invites like dozens of people like all the time. And so as a result, I just stopped inviting him because those group chats stop being interesting, right? And I think that that's that is that kind of exclusionariness. Yeah, you could say that it's a bad thing, but sometimes people just need their space. And so it's not. It's. I don't think that there's anything inherently wrong with that, unless you're using that to like exploit other people. But yeah, which a lot of people in the crypto space do.
Well, yeah, maybe you could say there's a difference between curation and exclusion.
But is there? I feel like that. I mean, you could say that.
Well, I think maybe in intent. Or maybe not.
And
I don't know.
curation. What's the difference in intent?
Well, so yeah, so maybe not. I was just thinking like that you would curate something for a more altruistic reason than you would like exclude. But maybe that's pretty subjective though. So maybe it's not a good point.
Yeah, I mean, like I also think that like very rarely do people think of themselves as the bad guy, right? So one person's curation is another person's exclusion, right? And so it's like you could say that intent is different, and it very well might be, but like you can't see inside people's heads either. So like ultimately, I do think that there's a desire for these kinds of like curated groups. I feel like there was that big article like a couple of weeks ago, which essentially said that group chats were the reason that Donald Trump got elected a second time, right? Like there was these group chats with Mark Andreessen, and he and he was like kind of the leader of this like kind of like Silicon Valley cabal. I mean, whether or not you agree or even believe the article is your is your prerogative, but this idea that kind of these group chats, this curated list of people exists. First of all, I think it's more important now to people because these kinds of public town squares like Twitter and Facebook have just turned into complete AI slop, and they've just turned into complete like hell zones of political bubbles and salesmanship and all this kind of thing. So those group chats, I think, are a natural, let's say, consequence or reaction to that. Oh, you can't hear me, Drost? Darn it, I was on a roll.
I can hear you.
Oh, you can hear me?
Yep.
So only Shelby can hear me, apparently. Oh, okay, there we go. Now
Yeah, I got you back, Links. I can hear you again.
Now I can hear. Now I can hear you. I thought it was on my end. I was getting ready to like leave and come back, but.
So what was the last thing you heard?
I think the last word was intent, but I don't know.
Yeah, you were saying something about these private chats, and I was about to disagree with you because I was going to say that I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that if you're talking about the U.S. Election, that Democrats wouldn't go on these podcasts. They wouldn't go on Joe Rogan. They wouldn't go on some of these right-leaning programs, and specifically podcasts, and that's where more people that came out and voted for Trump this time, they are podcast listeners, kind of the manosphere kind of thing, and the progressives wouldn't go on those shows, and it hurt them. That's my understanding of one of the takes on it. But yeah, that's the last I heard was that you were saying that it was because of private chats with Mark Andreessen, and that's when the audio cut out.
Yeah, there was an article about these private chats with Mark Andreessen and this idea of opinion shaping that was happening on some of these networks like Twitter, right? So the podcast and the distribution stuff. So I ended that by saying like maybe you don't believe that the article itself, like even if you don't believe the article or the premise of the article, I do think that this idea of group chats is a natural consequence to the just like enshittification of the public squares like Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, where they're all like AI slop and scammers and stuff like that, right? Like if in a world like that, of course you want these spaces with people who you know and trust. Kind of makes sense, right?
I think I agree with Trost as well that in a world like that we currently see, like podcasts are kind of meant to simulate that like public group chat, right? It's like the long form, like long discussion, whatever, talk about whatever type of situation, but kind of in public that we can all sort of participate. That's why I'm a big fan of the platform.
Of the podcast platforms, you mean?
Yeah. In general, I really like the sort of like open-ended, the open source nature of it, right? Like the idea that everybody can make their own show. To me has always been sort of like the biggest one, the coolest thing, and just having sort of those tools be accessible, more and more accessible to people as time goes by or whatever, is a super awesome thing. I think that just giving people the power to create is really cool, and being able to be a person who sits on the sidelines and listen into all of those interesting discussions that people have, and then choose to create and share with others, to me is like that's a huge value.
Yeah, I agree with you. I do think that people say that podcast media is like kind of like an intimate, more intimate way of knowing like a person or something like that person who's it's a relationship you have.
Well, it's almost like the current version of like talk radio, right? It's just like talk
Mhm.
radio on demand, where I used to listen to, a host yak with whatever guests for hours and hours. I don't know if anybody else did that back in the old terrestrial radio days, but I was an AM radio guy. I would sit and listen to that talk radio at work all the time. And podcast seems to fill that void for me, but it seems to be that like, back in the days when there was talk radio, I imagined, what sort of power would it be if some of your most interesting friends were given sort of that microphone and platform to be able to, have those interesting discussions. And that's, I think, what podcasts came to be for me.
Yeah, I liken it more to like a night show, like a nightly show, like like the Tonight Show or like something like that, like Johnny Carson, David Letterman, right? Like I liken it more to that.
Analogy.
Yeah, because like those ones, it was a very expensive way to do that. Like network television was just inherently expensive, and it was a big production and spectacle. And now podcasts allow anyone to kind of have that format. And yeah, I agree. Talk radio is kind of related to that, but that idea of that relationship you have with the host, I think that really exists in podcast as well as those like nightly shows.
And I think another reason why people kind of tend to trust independent media more, whether they, in the right or in the wrong, it's, DYOR, and make sure you like do your own fact checking. Make sure that your fact checkers aren't sponsored by NGOs that are receiving money from actual governments from non-NGO funds. But beyond that, like in terms of giving people a voice, radio had that for a little while. TV kind of had that back in the 80s and 90s, and that's how we got Wayne's World. Thank you very much. But eventually it turned into something new. Party on, Wayne. Party on, Garth. Eventually it turned into something totally new and more interactive because you got the comments there, right? It's like how Web 1 turned into Web 2 with Dig, and you could kind of react to people. Well, now it's the same with audio and video. But beyond that, Links, you mentioned that it's an expensive endeavor putting on something like Jimmy Kimmel. And I feel like it's kind of expensive by design. It prices out the other voices. And once you have control of the main voice, then you can really push narratives and whether it's a hard right or a hard left narrative, I think the ultimate goal is division, and you're able to then sort of divide the public and keep the bread and water show going on. I mean, without getting too political, I just wanted to point to that sort of idea of having freedom of speech and the sort of sovereign voice and sovereign platform to go out and do this on your own, and not be controlled by YouTube standards, like quote unquote standards, like who's making the standards, right? Who's the thought police? And so this is where podcasts kind of sidestep that, and I think that's why people really they can get behind that messaging because they feel like it's a voice of the people rather than the voice from up on high telling them what to think and do.
Well, here's the question. Do you think podcasts fit in this kind of ontology of teams, clicks, and scenes? Because I was like thinking to myself, like, what about like a group that forms up around like a creator or celebrity? Like, where do they fit in here? And I wasn't really. I mean, where do you think do you think that those podcasts fit in here?
I mean, I think podcasts can kind of fit into any level because it's just a medium of communication, right? It's the same as a forum, or it's the same as any other form of publishing where you can get your message out there, and whether they're people writing letters back to you or if they're commenting in the comment section, both teams and clicks and zines all need their way of getting messaging out. Kind of like Farcaster has GM Farcaster, right? That's just Adrian and Prof just shooting shit over a scene, and it informs people about the scene the same way that a click can choose to publish content or a team can choose to publish content. And then I guess you could drill down a little bit further and sort of explore how the individual, like how does the individual play into this? Because with podcasting, you're now your own team. You can do all your own film, you can do all your own audio, you can do all your own editing, and you can just talk to guests on a screen. You don't have to have a whole studio and everything. So it's really just down to the individual. So yeah, I don't know if that's something else that.
So what do you think,
consider?
like Joe Rogan is, for instance, or like what's a podcast that you listen to?
Yeah, I listen to Joe Rogan.
So what do you think Joe Rogan is? Is that like a team, a clique, a scene?
Well, as much as he likes to say he doesn't have people choose guests for him, I believe that there's a way that, obviously everybody can be influenced. He's talking to people, they're saying, like, why would he interview Peter Thiel? Did he interview Peter Thiel just because he wanted to, or because, it was convenient for Trump getting into office or whatever that may be? But at the same time, you can look at other podcasts and quite plainly see that they're influenced. And then you look at other podcasts, which I don't believe are influenced by outside money, political money, lobbyist money, and then they get attacked for the things that they say. And they kind of it's almost like the establishment sicking their dogs on them, right? So in Twitter, they're getting smeared constantly. I think Joe Rogan kind of sits somewhere between on that. He started this whole thing. He just started, we saw his uprising, right? We saw him starting I didn't start following him until maybe 7-8 years ago, something like that. And I just find his conversations and his guests interesting. There's such a broad range. I definitely don't agree with everything he says, but he is a good sort of conversation moderator, and he drives the conversation in a good way. So we've seen that he has started with just the agenda of talking to people, interesting people like Graham Hancock, and he has turned that into a sort of powerhouse of sway and persuasion. And whether he wanted to do that or not, I don't know, but that's what he is now. Like what he says as an individual holds sway over political, like elections and probably government security and all sorts of things. I mean, we can get down to UFOs, blah, blah, blah. And who knows? So it's difficult to say whether he is like, whether he fits into any of those, whether he has a team behind him. He's got Jamie doing his editing. And then you'll start to see that like that has been replicated now across multiple podcasts. You've got a guy who's on screen talking to a guest, and then you have the producer behind the scenes who's pulling up images, fact checking in real time. And I think that's kind of an extra thing that people like, right? You've got the real time fact checking. I think the next level beyond that would be like real time fact checking in spaces. Like, you know, you have 4 or 5 producers who are all doing the thing and, you know, feeding the data, but you could probably do that with AI as well. Anyway, I got a little off track there, but does that answer your question?
Yeah, well, I mean, do you think Joe Rogan is a team, a scene, a clique, or something else?
Something else. He's just a voice, and what he represents.
Yeah, something else. And I would also differentiate between journalism versus opinion. And I don't remember when this all kind of shifted, but I think one of the things that happened with newsrooms is that it's expensive to do journalism and it's cheap to do talk. And so when CNN got sold, basically, I think that's when that all started to happen. And then so now you don't have as many journalists out there able to do source reporting, and it takes time to do that stuff, right? You can't turn it around that fast. And so there's been this rise of just chatter. And so, you know, when people are listening to somebody, it's like Joe Rogan. Yeah, Joe Rogan's kind of fun to listen to and interesting, and he brings up some good questions and stuff. I listen to some other thing like Hassan Minhaj doesn't know, and he's pretty good. He asks a lot of great questions as just somebody wanting to know what the hell, why are you doing this? What's your deal, man? And but yeah, so differentiating between journalism and opinion, I think, is important. Like I had done a show where I was interviewing. I was working with that I had mentioned back a while back with the research I was working with University of Colorado, and she had interviewed a couple of different people, and then we put them on the show. And you know, she pointed out in that conversation, it's like, look, I'm not a journalist. I'm just doing some research on DAOs. And so part of what and I hadn't published this second one yet because of my own internal questioning. I had a guest on a roundtable, and then we had another episode that I still have that I haven't fully edited yet that I would like to bring in another voice on, frankly, because this is talking about Lobby 3 becoming open civics. And it is just one person's perspective on that who, you know, they were one of the principals and had a financial stake in it and had done some development work. But that's the only voice I heard. You know, I didn't hear the other voices. And so, you know, I don't feel if I put that out, I need to be clear that this isn't a journalistic piece. But, you know, not everyone makes that distinction. And I'm becoming more sensitive to this because of, you know, when you do put stuff out there, you know, are you reporting on fact? Are you doing original reporting, or are you just having a conversation? And I like banter. You know, if you're just having banter, it's not really necessary to fact check. But if it gets into some topic, I think that's what happened with like Joe Rogan. This has happened with some other people. Is it like I was just listening to The Daily, which is a New York Times podcast that's really good, and that's a journalistic. Whether regardless of how you feel about the New York Times, they do original journalism. But on the daily, they do an interview, I think like once a week or so. And this one they did an interview with Andrew Schulz, who is a kind of a right-wing podcaster. And I listened to it because I want to learn about it. I want to hear about why, what, and why, and how. And he doesn't claim to be a journalist. He's a comedian. He was doing stand-up, and he was using his podcast and he started out just posting some jokes, and he ended up getting an audience and started having a podcast and grew the audience, and then suddenly people wanted to come on. And so he gives his take on stuff, and he isn't intending to be a journalist. Now, I've never listened to his show, but I was listening to the interview with him. And so I get that. And I can see how these things develop and evolve. Anyway, I don't know where I was going with that other than differentiating between journalism and
I think I got a quick take.
Opinion
Maybe
talk.
That's a really good one, Drist. I think that's pretty deep dive. It fundamentally links the what I was thinking about in terms of what is Joe Rogan in terms of the thing. I think that or like what is a podcast? It's in general it's a show plus an audience, and the show plus an audience combination doesn't always, I think, make a community. Like a community could grow certainly from that combination of those two elements, show plus audience. As an audience gets large enough, perhaps a community naturally develops from it. But in general, I think that the show may just be seen as sort of like a in support of community type situation, as opposed to it being a community in and of itself.
Yes, yeah, very, very good point. And that kind of points back to what you were asking, Lynx. Is Joe Rogan a team? Well, in a way, like we established, he is a team. It's him and Jamie, but he can be the voice of a community. He can be the voice of a scene. He can be the voice of a clique, and the voice of a team. So it's more of a medium rather than a specific, like, podcasts at the heart of them are more a medium rather than an entity themselves. But then, as you said, Tom, they can become entities. Entities can form around them. So yeah, specifically Joe Rogan, I don't know which one he would be, but he would represent multiple for sure. So yeah.
Yeah, this is so like a fan club, followers, enthusiasts. A fan club, they would spring up
Yes.
around someone rather than be
Or
that
something.
person themselves. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So fan club, Apple springs to mind, and Apple has teams. They definitely would have cliques within Apple, and they're definitely going to have a sort of scene, right? It is the scene. They have become all three, and now a fan club has formed around that. And then you get apps that specific Apple news. You get like Mac tracker apps. You get the whole sort of developer scene. So yeah, one thing becomes a part of that, and a podcast could be part of any of those things. So if you listen to, I don't really listen to many Apple podcasts, but I know, like, Apple Insider, for example, they've got a podcast. They are a team, but they represent a scene. And I'm sure they have some clicky stuff too. So yeah, I would kind of rest on that, really, that podcast it's a medium that can represent all three.
No, I think it's worth the discussion, right? Because I think, like, as we're trying to develop tools for communities, it's good for us to kind of like have this mental model of a community. And I shared this ontology not because I'm like, this is it, this is the ontology, but just because I think it provokes some discussion, and I think it's discussion that I want to have here at this place, because ultimately our goal is to serve communities. And we can't really do that unless we understand them. So it's worth some thinking, and it's worth some investigation. And I do think that everyone's points of view, I really think that they're helpful in kind of exploring this together. There's only just so far you can get with thinking on your own. So appreciate everyone sharing. But yeah, I guess we're kind of wrapping up here. Anything else anyone wants to say on this topic of communities or this ontology, or just any other thoughts that came up as we were speaking?
Just as a point of reference, the Thriller and I have started up a conversation on Tuesdays, and that's at 11 a.m. Pacific. And it's about podcasts. And we just kind of started the discussion. We've been doing it like for 3 weeks, 3-4 weeks now, with no specific agenda. We started to attract a few folks. In fact, there was a guy from Octant that was very interested in having conversations and more on the blockchain philosophy side. And in fact, he's in a group that's talking blockchain philosophy. And then just yesterday, we had Cool Cat, who's a Bankless DAO OG, and we used to be in the Writers Guild and worked with Nonsense Twice, if you remember that name. She came in and she was super interested in getting involved in some of what we were talking about. We were talking about vibe coding as well, and doing some exploring AI some more. Like the Thriller was talking about when his mom passed away, and he was wanting to kind of build a mom AI because he has some conversations recorded with her, and I kind of did a similar thing with my mom, and anyway, so there have been some really interesting conversations that have started to bubble up out of this, and I think it's leading to something. I don't know what that is yet, but trying to build a participatory thing here, and really building it, starting from what people are really interested in, and then also learning from our own experiences, given that Thriller's been doing his show for a while and I've been doing Making Bank for a few years. We each have a different perspective and a different way of producing it and things we've learned. So, that's a kind of a cool thing that I'm working on that's tangentially related to BCard. So anyway, I just thought I'd mention that.
Sweet. Thanks for sharing. Would you say it's a scene or a team?
I think it could be a team formation.
Sweet.
And then we'll see. But ultimately, if you don't have an audience, it's like that. Then we're talking about, who are we talking to? What's compelling? What are we doing that's different than what's already out there? Or are we taking and listening to or consuming what's already out there, and then using that as a basis for discussion? And so we've been talking about that as doing kind of like a salon where we refer to some original reporting and then discuss our points of view on it. So that was another thing we talked about as well.
Nice. Cool. Well, we're on the tail end here, so I just want to say thank you to everyone for, of course, the work that you're doing, being involved in the discussion. I think that's really important too. We are a team, right? That's the entire point of BCard, and I think a lot of DAOs is that kind of aim. There is some sort of goal that you're accomplishing. There's some sort of reason that you exist, and there's some sort of change that you want to see in the world. That's why BCard is around here, and I think the change that we're aiming to see in the world is, again, making that world a little bit more bottom up, giving those purpose-driven communities a little bit more support so that they can exist in this world of top-down, let's say, economically driven or financially driven organizations. I think we're kind of at peak top-down financial driven organizations right now, and we're part of the wave to change things for the better. I mean, we saw it a little bit last night with a candidate who had very little corporate money. He just had a ton of groundswell support win a Democratic primary for the New York mayor. So he's not the mayor yet, but just from his fundraising alone, you can see that most of his fundraising came from individuals, and he was the second highest person who had the amount of fundraising. And if you take away the money that came from the Democratic Party, then he actually had the top amount of funding from everyone, and it was all from individuals if you didn't include that Democratic Party. So I think it's really telling that people are seeking change, right? Like, they see this kind of like institutions that exist, and they are asking for change. And our goal here as a team is to help people is to help people have the tools to enable that bottom up change. So yeah, I'm really passionate about it. I think the world needs it, and I really appreciate that all of you are helping get us there. So thanks everyone. Appreciate you all being here.
Here's links. Great conversation today, guys.
Thank you, Links. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thanks
Nice
all.
chat.
Have a great day.
Have a good
Enjoy
one.
the summer.
Thanks, everyone.